requires the offender to take responsibility and to say, I did this, and I'm prepared to make amends. Now, it's hoped, I've had with the Prison Fellowship of Nigeria in Enugu, we were doing a profiling of inmates for restorative justice. And so we had a sensitization of the inmates in the correctional center. And many of the inmates were interested in restorative justice. But we also had many of them that were asking us questions. And guess what the questions were? I'm in this prison, but I'm not guilty of the crime. Okay? It does happen. There are a lot of people in custody that are not guilty of the crime. But if you're going to access restorative justice, you have to take ownership. You have to take ownership. You have to own the problem. I did it, and I'm prepared to make amends. So that's one of the key things. Now, transformation, this can cause fundamental changes. Also going to what the gentleman said, it can cause fundamental changes in people, in relationships and in communities. Restorative justice presents that opportunity for an offender to make good. He takes he changes, he turns around. Let me say he repents, he turns around and does not go back to the offense or the life of crime. Now relationships can be amended, and respect is key also. In the Restorative Justice Forum, everybody has an opportunity to speak, and everybody has an obligation to listen. Now, I'm not going to go much into this. This is simply the difference between restorative justice and retributive justice. Retributive justice is what we are all, accustomed to. Now, crime is a wound. Justice should be the healing of that wound. That's the outcry of restorative justice. So a punitive justice system that ignores the specific needs of the victims does not create safer communities, but instead, it not only alienates those they punish, but it also does the community that are affected by the crime. So there's kind of a disconnect with the retributive system. It puts everybody off. But restorative justice brings everybody together. Now, these are just some questions. I think, let's just look at this. The punitive justice system asks 3 questions. What law was broken? How many lawyers are in this room, apart from my lords? Okay? What law was broken? Okay, sister. But restorative justice says who was harmed. I got about 2 different approaches, completely different. What law was broken? Say, oh, is this man, he's a criminal. He broke into these people's house. That is it. But who suffered? Who was harmed? The justice sector completely ignores who was harmed. In a manner of speaking, although the ACJLs, the ACJA and all the laws for the different states have addressed a lot about the outcomes of the crime. They have, like I said, they have adopted restorative justice remedies without the process. So the judges and and the magistrates have been empowered to give restitution, compensation, other community service, and things like that. But this process, this restorative process that should lead properly to that outcome, that should connect to that outcome, the law has left it out. So it's something that the Anambra State would have to address. Now, so what law was broken? Who was harmed? Who did it? Mr. Garfield. Who is responsible for repairing harm? It should be Mr. Garfield. Okay? Now, how are we going to punish them? These offenders. Restorative justice says, how will the harm be repaired? Okay? What's the solution? What's the solution to the problem? The fact that his house has been broken into. There are effects even in the community. People are feeling unsafe because house A has been broken into. People are unsafe. What is being done about that? That you catch a car and you incarcerate him in prison. Does it change anything? The person whose jewelry that the mother, great-grandmother, and great-great-grandmother left for her like 5 generations back. In fact, the worth is not in money, it's priceless. Those things have been taken. Who is going to take responsibility for that? So there's a key difference. Now there are roles and responsibilities. Let me look at the victim's role in a restorative justice process. The victim has to dialogue with the offender. The victim is not coerced, it's a voluntary process. But once the victim says, yes, I want to be there, I want to dialogue with the offender, then the victim has to be in the process and has to participate. The victim has to, with the offender and the facilitator, look for solutions. Okay? Now, it has to be a face-to-face encounter, and the victim has to take ownership. That no man, everybody is innocent until found guilty. But in really seriously speaking, my lord, I'm going to put all of you on the spot. Truly seriously speaking the truth between God and man. When they bring people in for armed robbery, does your first response to the person, is it, oh, this man is innocent? I've never been a judge before. I've always been a mediator.
There's no emotions to it. You are on a clear slate.
So, as far as you're concerned, he's neither innocent nor guilty.
Yes.
So the presumption of innocence is not realistic.
No, it is.
Wait on his side. The victim as well as the offender have to be treated with respect. Now, a facilitator cannot tell the offender, you this man, what even, how do I say it now? What even made you go and steal somebody's phone or break into somebody's home? You didn't have home training for being such a rogue and a scoundrel. That cannot be done in the court either. But of course, there's a lot of decorum in court as they should be. But there's also decorum in restorative justice forum. Another thing in restorative justice, just as the offender has to be treated with respect, the victim has a right in restorative justice to be acknowledged as a victim. I'll give you a typical example. A girl is raped. The first thing the police will say, is it that skirt that you are wearing here? So the victim is almost re-victimized because the acknowledgement of what, sorry, did I say police? I'm sorry. The acknowledgement of the harm and the pain and the suffering has not taken place. What you're looking at is that you victim, you're the cause of what happened to you. Now, in restorative justice, that is an absolute no-no. A victim is a victim. Okay? So, now because of time, I'm just of the corrections, well, probation and corrections referral. So, coming from you. Post-sentence, reintegration, parole agencies and NGOs, and then post-confinement. After the offender has been sentenced, confined, there can be restorative justice. And before I close, I'll give a very short story of one such case, of restorative justice case. So we talked about victim mediation, victim-offender mediation, the victim and the offender. Who helps them? A trained restorative justice facilitator. Circles includes much more people than that. In circles, we can have the police, we can have community members, supporters of the victim and supporters of the offender. It's usually an arrangement such as this. Okay. Now the process, all the processes, just in general, apart from specifics, are that first of all there's the referral. The correctional center says, correctional service, non-custodial, says there's this case. We want it to go to the restorative justice center. So the case comes in, what happens next? The facilitator has the responsibility to prepare the victim. It's a whole lot of risk mitigation process. You want to find out certain things. Is the victim eligible for restorative justice? Sometimes the victim will say, I don't want. I don't want. If I see that man, I will never be the same again in my life. I'll be re-traumatized. Okay? So, victim has a session with the restorative justice facilitator. The offender is prepared. When both sides are ready, the restorative justice facilitator brings them together for a restorative justice session at the end of the day. It's almost like a regular mediation, but it has its rules and it has its different different points of focal points or points of emphasis, because it's criminal, it's a crime involved, and people have been badly hurt. About restorative justice, but you came from the United States, and all of us mediators, typically at the multi-court house in Lagos, where I was director before I came to Nubu on retirement. So I'm on retirement now. So if we heard there was somebody, an expert that came into Lagos from anywhere, and we thought, okay, whatever the person has might be.
To also acknowledge the presence of my very, very learned seniors here. I acknowledge the presence of the police force, the correctional services, Nigeria, and the judiciary too, will not be deprived of their work when we eventually settle down for restorative justice. Are you sure we are not going to lose our job? On a very lighter note. Yes, on a very lighter note. However, it is important to point out here that restorative justice has so much benefits. Yes, so much benefits. First of all, because it creates a forum for healing the victims of crime. Before now, the traditional notion is punishment, punishment, punishment. And you see that the whole thing is revolving around the offender. There is no thought spared for the victim of the crime, no thought spared for the community too. Because justice is a three-way traffic. Justice for the offender, justice for the victim, justice for the state, for the community. Yes, one way or the other. Each and every one of this group expect justice. Now, law as a means of social control seeks to create order. And criminal law, which has primarily the object of punishment. That is the primary object of criminal law, to impose punishment. And the essence or the object of punishment has been built around some very important theories. The theories of retribution, the theory of deterrence. These are the theories around which punishment revolves. Retribution, that the offender should get what he has given in return. That he should be paid in his own coin. More or less, a tit for a tat. Do me, I do you. God go best, you know go best. That is the idea of retribution theory. That the offender should get what he has given. But the problem has been the proportionality of what he's getting. For experience, they have said, for a fight of life, you don't use a gun. And I have retorted, I said to them, I said, there are some knives that are more active than guns. So. Yes, I said to them, and they all laughed. But there is a point I sought to make there. Then you talk about the deterrence theory, whether it's from the special or from the general perspective, that the essence of punishment is to deter future offenders. So that looking at the punishment that some other person has said, you will be deterred from what? From committing the same crime. All still revolving around the offender. No thought spared for the victim. But today we have been converged here to look at the side of the victim of the crime, to look at the side of the community, or rather the state. Because we have said, whenever a crime is committed against the state. And I have some sociology students that I take on the introduction to Nigerian legal system, and I told them that crimes are committed against the state. And God said, even when they rape somebody, it is committed against the state. Yes. Very amazing. So today we want to stay a thought for the victims of the crime. And you see that restorative justice now is beating against the tide. That is not the traditional notion. It's a kind of deviation from the traditional notion. So that the victim is taken into consideration. The community is taken into consideration. Head towards having what we call healing, repairing what has been taken away. Because whenever a crime is committed, something has been taken away from the victim of the crime. And that has been taken away needs to be what? To be replaced. The victims of the crime also suffer trauma emotionally, psychologically, otherwise as well. My job is to look at the global practice, the success stories of restorative justice, and then the challenges. Lastly, how we can mitigate these challenges. Having said that, it is important to point out that restorative justice is a new phenomenon, particularly in Nigeria. It is something that we are trying to adapt to. But that does not mean that this restorative justice does not happen in other climes. I use the UK as a case study, particularly the UK. Incidentally, Nigeria is a common law legal system. We operate the common law legal system. By virtue of colonization, we have also been handed on the laws, the legal system of our colonizers, and we practice that. And it will not be out of place if we begin to make reference to where we borrowed our law from. When we come to the success stories, like I said earlier, although a new phenomenon, restorative justice holds so much promises for any criminal justice system and the entire legal system. Because when everything continues to go to court, every matter continues to go to court, and then we leave the courts congested, abandoning the victims, and then facing towards Jerusalem, looking at how the offender will be pinned down. Whereas we have line up of victims who are begging for justice. And then we call them nominal complainants. Nominal. We say they are not parties to the conflict. But then when it comes to testimonies and the rest of them, they are at the forefront. What's an inconsistency? They are not parties. But then the case revolves around them. It begins and ends almost with them. It is important that we borrow this practice. It is important that we make it part of our justice system. It is important we reap the fruits of restorative justice, so that many hearts that are wounded, so that many hearts that yearn for justice, so that many hearts that yearn to listen to their offenders will be able to satisfy this thirst. Like the first speaker or presenter has already said, ordinarily, everyone who has been a victim of crime will like to ask, can you help them? Why did you get to this length? How did we get here? You would like to confront your offenders. And this gives us the opportunity. And so there are success stories of restorative justice. Restorative justice will give the opportunity of emotional healing. Very important. It will also give room where the victim of the crime will be able to sit face to face with the alleged offender. It will also give room for the communities to be involved in the justice process, so that it will not just be the business of the victim of the crime, but the business of the entire community. And when it becomes a business of the entire community, every other person becomes a stakeholder. And when we are stakeholders, then we are going to build a formidable system that will enable future persons who intend committing crime in the future to know that even the community is interested in the well-being and what happens in the community. So that the deterrence we are talking about will also be a kind of a special arrangement. Special arrangement in the sense you have this system, you have the other system, you put them together and you'll be able to have something that is very good. So, restorative justice system has a lot of success stories. It also has a tendency of reducing the level of crime in the society. Yes, because once you have the opportunity to be brought up to account, because you will be held accountable for your acts. So that it's not you business as usual, you commit an act and then you hide under the guise of whatever to share away from the responsibility or from being accountable to your crime. So it has a lot of stories. Even in our own local areas, we have remembered what happened during the NSAS, after which some panels were set up in order to try to address or to listen to some of the victims of some of these police brutality and the rest of them. I can tell you that a good number of people found that gathering very impressive. They found that at least for the first time, to be able to open up to say, this is what we suffer from this group of people. This is part of what the restorative justice will go a long way to do and has been doing in other crimes. Remember I have said that the fact that is new here, that is at its infancy stage here in Nigeria, does not mean that it is not working elsewhere. At the UK, we have the Restorative Justice Council, which they have been operating, a platform that has been given this type of forum to address issues at least that require this sort of restorative justice system. Nigeria, as a country, and particularly as a Commonwealth country, is also required to borrow a bit from the Restorative Council of UK. You go to the United States also. We have this restorative justice curriculum that is also introduced at school levels. It can also be introduced into our curriculum so that from the level at the school, we will be exposed to the principles of restorative justice. Because whether you like it or not much of us, not so many of us, are aware, are educated about the principles and the workings of restorative justice. And so it is important that at the school levels that these restorative justice principles are introduced so that we or the students are in the know of what restorative justice system is all about. Because it is when you are educated that you'll be able to know your right and to the extent of the workings of the restorative justice system. Now, having said that, are there any challenges to adopting or implementing restorative justice system? Of course, they have worked elsewhere. But here in Nigeria, we have some special challenges that could constitute a hurdle to the workings of restorative justice system. First of all, is that what some of the states are practicing seem not to be culturally sensitive. In as much as we are introducing the restorative justice system, we must tailor or adopt them to our cultural values. Because after all, the restorative justice principles and then workings in the first instance, like the first presenter has said, is something that we borrow from the traditional justice system. And so we need to tailor our own working of the restorative justice system to our own culture. Another barrier that we could have is the barrier of change. Sometimes we can be change resistant. We can be change resistant, particularly in cultures where those punitive values are already entrenched. You see that it is difficult for them to accept what is new. But whether we like it or not, yes, the evidence that we are growing is our ability to introduce things that are new, but which will help what we are doing. Once we have something new, and those new things have the possibility, whatever you call it, of changing the already system we have found ourselves in, it is important that we borrow them and entrench them into what we are already doing. Apart from that, there is also a need for capacity building. Our judges, our magistrates, and other members of the judiciary, and other relevant stakeholders must also be exposed to the workings and the principles of restorative justice. Because you can only give what you have. You cannot give what you do not have. So, we encourage the government at the state level, at the federal level, to set up a high-power training workshops, seminars, conferences, and the rest of them in order to train our judges, our magistrates, and other stakeholders in the run to entrench restorative justice on how it works. It is also important that there will be a kind of awareness campaign. The society and every relevant person in this field need to be educated or need to be aware of what restorative justice is all about. Over and above all, restorative justice system requires funding. It requires resources because it is capital intensive. So we are also calling upon the government, be it at the state level or at the federal level, to borrow from other clients like the US and the UK, so that the funding of this system will be a critical one. It is critical to the sustainability of restorative justice. I think with this, it is clear to us that restorative justice system has come to stay. It is important also that we amend our laws or adopt laws that will give a legal backing to restorative justice. Because with that legal support, we go a long way to take and then explore and reap the harvest of restorative justice in our society and particularly in Nigeria. Thank you once again.
Their own principles and make provisions on how to deal with the inmates to foster better delivery of rehabilitation and reforms needed to take care of the inmates and run some programs that will rehabilitate and reintegrate the inmates or generally criminal convicts into the society. I am addressing it from this direction because the correctional services officers are here and where they are involved are places where some persons convicted and some persons remanded in custody. Generally, they do not play roles outside those who are in their custody. While addressing the stakeholders in a national conference to brief them on the new position, the new Minister of Interior, stated that the aim was to engender reforms that would decongest country's custodial facilities and bring in efficient, effective, and sustainable solutions for viable and achievable results, which will be susceptible to decency. And I am emphatic on this word decency. In other words, in speaking, he observed that our correctional services and the delivery of justice system does not represent anything decent. In other words, looking at it from the point of the victim and the society, there is no decency. There's no decency. Then the Chief Justice of Nigeria, the then Chief Justice of Nigeria, Honorable Justice Olukayode Ariwola, commented on the administration of justice in the country, and looked at it from at the end of it, concluded that that position is very perilous, very dangerous, very risky, and the society is moving into a place where it will now be very dangerous for all of us, because the victims are suffering and the society is suffering, and even the offenders feel that they have not been, the justice have not been done to them. The word decency, as employed by the minister, connotes behaviors that conforms to acceptable standard of morality or respectability or reasonable standard of life. Perilous, as used by his lordship, Justice Ariwola, means danger or this imminent risk or danger or disaster or ruin to the society. So if we do not take time to look at criminal administration of criminal justice system in Nigeria, we are moving steadily into ruin, into perilous times. Interpolating the two, we have clear impression that correctional services are not good enough, indeed driving the communities, the states and the nation to a dangerous level, so much that we need to steer it back and take it to an acceptable standard for the good and safety of the offenders, the victims, and the society. It is in pursuit of this lofty idea that Anambra State government has enacted administration of criminal justice law of the year 2022. In the little time allowed to us, we will highlight some of those provisions in the law meant to steer us away from the perilous journey and direct us to the decent road that will bring restoration and reintegration of criminal convicts in the society. When I say criminal convicts, I'm mindful of the fact that there are some persons who are in awaiting trial, and there are those who have been convicted. Those who have been convicted have been examined and found to be guilty. And these ones are the ones that we may pay some attention to, because they themselves have seen that their situation is hopeless, and there is need now for them to move out for justice, not only for themselves, but for the victims and the society. We note from the beginning that the prime aims of criminal justice is to stop acts that are inimical to the welfare of the people living in the society, as the primary objective of the existence of a state is to protect lives and properties and make society a livable state. In other words, the primary concern of the law and criminal justice is to protect the society as a whole. And that society comprises the offender, the victim, and the main society, the state. Because the object of a state is the principal objective of a state is to protect lives and properties. And where these laws are being violated, broken here and there, the society is being violated, and the society is part of the victim of the acts of the offender. And therefore, it's my position that in whatever discussion we are talking about in reconciliation and restoration of justice, the state must equally be involved, so that the state will know that they are in a position, they are discharging their responsibilities, they are protecting the lives and properties of the people living in the society. The provision of the Anambra State and the provisions of the Administration of Criminal Justice Law 2022 and we consider are those dealing with criminal convicts. That is, those who have been critically examined and found to have fallen foul of the basic rules or rules called the deviance, and to protect the welfare of the members of the society as well as the victims of the deviance. When I use the word deviance, I am conscious of that word. In other words, they have moved away from what is normal, from what is standard, for what a society expects them to do, and that's why we complain. And that's why the society feels violated by their acts. Chapter 28 of the ACJL provides extensively for the compensation of the victims, restitution for the victims of crime, as well as provisions for restoration and integration of the offenders in small offenses. In other words, in minor offenses that do not strike into the deep morals of the society, like armed robbery, murder, and sexual offenses. Now we have heard some speakers mention about murder and armed robbery, kidnapping and all that. Now it is good that we try to bring these victims and the offenders together. It is very, very good. But in restoring them, talking about restoration, how do the victims restore the society which they have violated very strongly? Because it is very important. Now, if a crime is committed, a robbery is committed, one person has been, possibly one person has been, the robbery has been done on one person. But all the people who saw the act of robbery being committed have been violated. Because they will go home psychologically affected. Fear will be in all of them. So they are part and parcel of those who have been victims of the acts of the offender. And then of course the society, the government, the state, who feel that they are no longer discharging their responsibilities. So they need equally some justice. And then of course the community where the offense was committed. So that we see that a lot of things need to be done to bring criminal justice, to bring restoration of justice, or restoration of justice to all the people who are concerned. In section 399, it provides for suspended sentence, that is to say, to keep the sentence ineffective hanging and unimplemented as long as the convict conducts his life in a manner that promotes and enhances the object of peaceful living in the society, though he has been convicted. Section 399, subsection 2 provides for community service. This means that the convict is being deployed for some time to provide service to the society. In other words, to administer, to restore some level of justice to the society. Principles, rehabilitation and integration of prison inmates, or generally offenders and the victims and the society. What is the restorative justice? It has been defined as a set of principles that create a different approach to dealing with crimes and its impact. Practices that work to address the dehumanization frequently experienced by people in the traditional criminal justice system. Instead of being a criminal, act as simply a violation of rule or statute. Restorative justice sees this action as a violation of people and relationship. Restoration justice seeks to examine the harmful impact of a crime and then determine what can be done to repair that harm while holding the person who caused it accountable for his or her wrongful action or actions. Additionally, restorative justice seeks to include those most directly affected by the crime in the justice process, namely victims and survivors, rather than a process focused on the offender. Restorative justice focuses on those who have been harmed and the harms they have experienced. In the restorative justice process, victims are empowered to participate more fully than in the traditional system. Likewise, the community plays an important role in the restorative process by establishing standard of conduct, helping to hold an offender accountable, and providing support for the parties involved and the opportunity to help repair the harm that has occurred. For instance, in this occur, there have been a lot of shooting, a lot of killing, a lot of troubles. Now, how do we restore justice to all the families that have lost individuals one way or the other? What do we do to people? How do we restore justice to all those men and women whose children have been killed here and there? What do we do to the community? How do we get the community to say this is what can be done, so that they themselves will feel ameliorated, that they have been assuaged by what has happened? In other words, they will have to make contributions in the discourse of this system, in the basic principles or standard or things that are required for them to feel appeased by what has happened. The opportunity to express the harm a victim has experienced will require full participation. In other words, the person who has been violated, the person on whom the act has been done, who will have to be given opportunity to say how he felt or how he feels when the act was done against him. The offender to accept the truth that he has done wrong. Then, of course, the victim. It equally seeks to address the reasons for the offense. That is, restorative justice seeks to find out the reason for the offense. Why did you slap me? Or why did you slap him? Let's know what actually actuated you. Let's find the reason. And others who will be participants will only know the reason. So that if the reason seems to make some little sense, or whatever it is, we'll be watchful and careful not to do that, in order to generate the reason for another person to commit the same offense. When justice has been done, making part of it.
An opportunity to share some thoughts with us, and it is a good day. We've had a lot of talks, and I have something written out, it can be given out, but I just want to possibly give us a bit of background. How did prison fellowship venture into restorative justice? I think you'll be interested to know, because I must say that this is a workshop. And in a workshop, at the end of it, you must have something to show. That we either have produced a shovel, or that we have produced the idea for something to be produced. Our prison fellowship's journey in restorative justice started in response to the oddities, to the challenges we saw in the then prisons, now correctional service. We saw persons, of course, my executive director has told you that Prison Fellowship Nigeria is a faith-based organization, but our calling is to impact society, share the love of God with those who are incarcerated. Of course, we know that it has been said that if you want to know the level of social civilization of the people, watch out for how they treat their vulnerable members, particularly prison inmates. Now, we saw the situation, particularly then, now medium security is university, but in those days, my brothers and sisters in service who have been there, we know that that was one of the epicenters of degrading and inhuman conditions. I'm telling you how we got into here. So when you understand how and why we got into here, it will prepare your mind. There are a lot of papers, and it's there, you will have it.
I am Barrister CK Abiakam, OC Legal Nigerian Correctional Service, Anambra Command, representing the controller of the state, Mr. Bahamusu.
Okay, so today you are at this one-day workshop by Prison Fellowship International. Tell us what was your understanding about the topic of the day, which is restorative justice, before this workshop?
Yes, as a lawyer, restorative justice has been a concept that I've known way back from my school days. Though it was in theoretical form, they always gave us the literature or theoretical review about it or lecture, but it was hardly domesticated and practiced in Nigeria, not until now.
Okay. And okay, now having attended this workshop, has your understanding changed about the topic?
No, my understanding, I'm quite elated that it has been brought to bear. That is, it has been domesticated into Anambra State Administration of Criminal Justice Law 2022. That means it is home now with us in practice, no more theory. And restorative justice is a concept that everybody should imbibe. This is a situation where the offender, the victim, and the state meaning the community where the offense took place, will be brought together to look into that particular matter, that particular aspect of the crime, and with a view to redressing the wrong done on a more humane approach, not saying state versus this, being like abstract or robotic or mechanical, without having any emotion attached. Like you also know that ordinarily before now, the victims are always more like silence, their position, what they feel, what they went through. The fact that they lost something tangible is not normally addressed. But with restorative justice, it is fully addressed with a view to giving the victim closure and the state some level of satisfaction that the person has done her time or has learnt his lesson. Because for you to be qualified for restorative justice, ordinarily, you should have spent some quality time for your offense.
Okay, all right. At the last lap, how do you think this restorative justice can help inmates in your custody commit less crime and not to return to your facility?
Yes, of course it can help them a whole lot. Before now, most of the challenges that the inmates face is not having to hear their own side of the story, or nobody even looking out for them to say, apart from us, that are looking into their immediate and remote cause of their antisocial behavior or their unlawful behavior. Because part of our job in the reformation and rehabilitation and reintegration of the inmates is to find out what led you to commit this, no matter how heinous. Is it that you are psychologically imbalanced? Is it a product of dysfunctional home? Is it a result of any other psychosocial factor or any other factor whatsoever? So, and in this case, we want the community also to be part and parcel of the restorative process, because we do our bit. The community is supposed to also do their bit by seeing that person, the offender, as one of their own, that they have to help in talking sense, reforming them, in embracing our reform, like complementing our reform mechanisms, not just throwing it to us to lock in the correctional centers, custodial centers, and waiting for them, for us to spring magic. The criminal justice system is a symbiotic thing. If you do our bit, you do your bit, we'll have a sane society. It's not left for one person to do. So restorative justice is here to cure that lacuna.
Nneka Umuzulu. I am the Director of Public Prosecution, Ministry of Justice, Anambra State. This training on restorative justice is very enlightening. In our criminal justice system, we have always known about retributive justice. Yes. So this one is a novel, development. It's a paradigm shift from retributive justice to restorative justice. Because I think the retributive justice focuses just on the offender, punishment you have for crime committed. But restorative justice talks about not just the offender, even the victim is involved, and the society or the community is also involved, and the victim is now given the opportunity to confront the offender and then find out the reason for the action, thereby healing, and the community is given the opportunity to come in and wade into the situation. And even the offender is given the opportunity to make amends and change for the better, and then healing flows.
It's more encompassing.
It is more encompassing. Yes.
So that's your understanding about?
Yes, that is my understanding about restorative justice.
What about the practicability of this novel?
Because better put, how do you think in your environment and professional duty you can begin to encourage and practice this restorative justice?
It is very simple. Workshop. Because it is only through these workshops that we'll be able to know about restorative justice. Most of our lawyers, they only know retributive justice. You come to court, you present your client, and either the person is convicted and sent to prison, or the person is freed. But with these workshops, we now even begin to have compassion, even on the offender. Find out the reason for the action. You understand? So it is through workshops and sensitization that we'll come to realize all this. Just like this workshop that we're having now. Yes.
The award for Prison Fellowship Nigeria for organizing this.
Hi. In fact, I commend them for this effort. In fact, they have made our day, because this workshop has been very enlightening. We have achieved and gained a lot from it. And that is why our brains, we can see us brainstorming and asking so many questions, because there are novel areas that we never even averted our minds to. So this prison fellowship workshop is, in fact, a very good one, and I really commend them for it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Justice Samuel M. Okoye, Judge of the High Court of Anambra State.
So, what is your take on this workshop today, talking about restorative?
I was given the honor by the Chief Judge to be his rep at this event, this workshop on restorative justice. Well, number one thing about it is that I am happy that an initiative has been started to take a holistic view of the whole criminal justice system. The restorative justice, as this workshop has tried to emphasize, aims at focusing on the offender, not just on punishing him, but also to make him own his crime the offense he has committed and to show remorse, and also for the system to rehabilitate him, restore him to a normal human being in society. Also, the victim is not left out. There is focus on the victim under restorative justice to mollify or pacify the victim, and if possible achieve forgiveness on his part, so that he doesn't go about bearing malice and they wish to revenge. So the whole idea of the restorative justice is to get a holistic view of all aspects of persons impacted upon by offense that has been committed. So it's a good thing for our society. In the lectures here, we have been made to know that the same system of restorative justice is operational in other countries, other countries like US, UK, and others. And part of this workshop is to think out how we can make it applicable in our own clime, in our own criminal justice administration system.
Okay, so finally, you will agree with me that thinking that this restorative justice will encourage more people to commit crime because they believe. What do you think about that? Helping or making people to go back to crime, or will it in any way discourage them for the good of the
restorative justice, as we have been discussing here, does not throw away totally the idea of punishment. It does not. But the difference, the striking difference between restorative justice and the retributive justice that the courts have been practicing all these decades, even ever before our independence, is that it focuses only on the offender and on punishment of the offender, simply to deter others from committing offense, committing crimes. But retributive justice is, restorative justice is saying it is good that other people in society should be deterred, but that should not be the bus stop. The criminal justice system should incorporate this restorative justice, whereby the victim is mollified, is compensated or pacified, and then the offender himself is made to admit the commission of the offense, responsibility for the offense he has committed, and to be remorseful and to be ready to make amends. So that is the angle the restorative system of justice is coming from. It is not saying that punishment should be totally thrown away, but that it will involve a larger section of the community to address the offense that has been committed, the offender and the victim, and see how all could be restored to peaceful and loving human beings, and the society healed healing. Healing is the main thrust of restorative justice. Healing the society as a whole. You heal the victim, you heal the society, and you heal the offender against future commission of crimes. That is it.
Thank you very much, sir. You are named, sir.
Okay, I'm Prince Chris Azo. I'm the chairman, Civil Society Organizations, Anambra State. It's my pleasure.
What is your impression? What do you have to say about it?
It's really a welcome development because we see it from the angle of citizens, especially those that work in the communities, protecting human rights. And it's something that has to be given enough fillip for it to be spread across the system, because people should know their rights. The essence of democracy is protecting human rights. And restorative justice is about making man be responsible and responsive to society, protecting people's rights. It's an inalienable right that you're a human being. It's something that you cannot surrender to anybody, no matter the conditions. And if you look at today, people go about, people's rights are violated. We are looking at reconciliation. And the idea of this mechanism is for us to solve our problems ourselves. So it is welcome and we support it fully as civil society. But it's not it shouldn't be a one-off thing. It's something that should be inculcated in our system as a people. People should be aware of restorative justice. The government should be aware and practicalize it through the protection and preservation of human rights. So that is why we are from here going to do what I call the human rights evangelism. That we go out and let people know. I'm just coming from a meeting. What do we discuss? The patient's bill of rights. The rights you have. So we're not even talking about when you are healthy, but even when you are weak, even when you are not strong, when you are sick, your rights must be preserved, even in death. Standards of human rights. We support it fully. And we are ready to spread the message. Because some of the challenges we have is that the awareness sometimes are restricted to the city center. You understand? But those victims actually reside at the grassroots in the communities. So what we're going to do as civil society, as community-based organizations, people that work at the lowest rung of society, are going to take this gospel. That is why I say it's like an evangelism. That is really wonderful. It's a partnership that should be sustained. It's a partnership that its time has come. You look at the challenge of human rights, or challenge of justice, especially when things are hard, especially when people are in want and need. So this partnership should be sustained. And that is why we are here.
My name is G.C. Emekwechi. Give us the full name of one. Two full names.
George Chizoba Emekwechi is my name.
Okay, you delivered paper today?
Yes.
You also as a participant and also a resource person. Okay, but more importantly as a lawyer, we are talking about restorative justice, is to ask you whether you like...
Very important for everybody to encourage this restorative justice. I will encourage my clients, and I have been encouraging them to go into such discussions. And restorative justice is a win-win all situation where both the offender and the offended or the victim get justice. At the end of it, everybody is satisfied. And that satisfaction brings peace amongst all the parties. Everybody goes home happy. satisfied that justice has been done. That's why they go to court. Everybody that goes to court, if he's honest, is seeking for justice, not for any other thing. So if at the end of it, both the offender and the victim get together and the states or the community gets involved and they all resolve peacefully, and this person gets justice, this person gets justice, this person gets justice, then there is peace, there is joy, there is contentment, and everybody will be satisfied. So I will encourage my clients in the day, I will encourage my client in the night, I will encourage my client every time to embrace restorative justice, because it is meant for, it's good for everybody.
Thank you, sir.
All right, sir.
Please, the judges at the front row. Alas.
We want, please, the two most senior judges to join us to see the CJ. Okay.
I will not be poor.
Can you agree on the tentative date? Because next week, because the CJ will ask
Of course, has been working very hard, but as you can imagine, they've not been able to accurately compile all the proceedings. What I have here is a sketch which I'll read through and then seek your indulgence to go and finalize it and send to your various addresses. Can I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Communique issued at the conclusion of the Restorative Justice Sensitization Workshop organized by Prison Fellowship Nigeria in partnership with the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance with funding from the European Union. Held on February 14, 2025 at Hilton Leisure Resort and Hotel, Awka, Anambra State, Nigeria. Theme: fostering justice, reconciliation, and community healing. This communique, I hope you are with me. All right. The court has permitted that you should be eating with your mouth and listening with your ear. All right. This communique is issued at the conclusion of the one-day sensitization workshop on restorative justice held on February 14, 2025 at the Hilton Leisure Resort and Hotel, Awka, Anambra State, Nigeria. The workshop was hosted by Prison Fellowship Nigeria in partnership with the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, International IDEA, and was funded by the European Union. The workshop was anchored by the Office of the Attorney General of Anambra State and endorsed by the Chief Judge of Anambra State. The workshop aimed to deepen the understanding of restorative justice as a transformative approach that prioritizes healing, accountability, and community reintegration for both offenders and victims. Participants engaged in robust discussions and identified actionable steps to strengthen collaboration, build capacity, and advocate for restorative justice practices within Anambra State. This communique outlines the key deliberations resolutions, and commitments made during the workshop to ensure sustained impact and alignment with the overarching goals of successful implementation of restorative justice in Anambra State. Attendance. The workshop brought together 75 key stakeholders from various sectors, including representatives from the judiciary, Ministry of Justice, law enforcement, correctional services, civil society organizations, community leaders, the media. Notable attendees included the Chief Judge of Anambra State, the Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Anambra State, the Director of Public Prosecution, officials on the Ministry of Justice, officials from judges and magistrates from the judiciary of Anambra State, officials from the Ministry of Justice, the Nigerian Police, Nigerian Correctional Service, civil society organizations, religious leaders, community development associations, and media representatives. Workshop opening ceremony. So these are where the gaps will be, because we have not been able to capture the essence of each of the presentations. At the end of the question and answer session, participants agreed on the need for a clear roadmap for the adoption of restorative justice in Anambra State. The following decisions were made. 1. Establishment of a technical committee. A technical committee will be set up, chaired by a nominee of the Chief Judge of Anambra State, and include the following members. And those members are the ones we have outlined. Then, increased awareness and advocacy. A comprehensive advocacy campaign will be launched, including public enlightenment via media, civil society organizations, and traditional rulers to raise awareness and support for restorative justice. Capacity building. Continuous training and retraining of justice sector stakeholders will be prioritized to build capacity for effective restorative justice implementation. Monitoring committee. A monitoring committee will be established to oversee the implementation of restorative justice practices. Development of Anambra State restorative framework, restorative justice framework. A state-specific restorative justice framework will be developed for Anambra State with the goal of effective implementation of RJ by the state. Okay, resolutions. 1. Restorative justice is a valuable approach that aligns with the cultural values of Anambra State and has the potential to positively transform the justice system. 2. Key actors in the justice system, including traditional rulers and civil society organizations, must actively support and promote restorative justice. 3. The Anambra State government must ensure that restorative justice is integrated into the justice system, particularly through the development of supportive legal and policy frameworks. 4. Public education and awareness campaigns should be initiated immediately to build broader support for restorative justice. And lastly, a comprehensive implementation framework should be adopted to guide the introduction of restorative justice in the communities of Anambra State. All right.